Donald Trump absolutely hammered some members of his own party.
On the other hand, you had some that decided to, let's stay away. Let's stay away. They did very poorly. I'm not sure that I should be happy or sad. Carlos Cubella, Mike Kaufman. Too bad, Mike. Mia Love gave me no love. And she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia. And Barbara Comstock was another one. I mean, I think she could have won that race, but she didn't want to have any embrace. Peter Roscom didn't want the embrace. Eric Paulson didn't want the embrace.
Many saw that as false and misleading and petty. Republican Congressman Ryan Costello joins me in a moment. Here's what he said about it today. To deal with harassment and filth spewed at GOP members in tough seats every day for 2 years because of POTUS, Trump, to bite your lip more times you'd care to disagree and separate from POTUS, Trump, on principle and civility in your own campaign, and to lose because of Trump and have him, quote, piss on you, angers me to my core. Republican Congressman Ryan Costello joins me now. What do you want to say back to the president today?
Well, Ari, I watch a show sometimes, and I know you like those rap lyrics, and I feel that if you were to go to Ghetto Boys, My Mind Is Playing Tricks on Me.
Sure.
That the president here has his mind is playing tricks on him. We lost those seats because of the president. Those are good members of Congress. I understand that some people didn't vote Republican this time around, but they worked hard. They all had an independent streak, and every single day they were dealing from incoming a lot of hate and a lot of tough stuff said their way, and they did their best. And to have the President of the United States mock them on the way out after a tough campaign, I just think it's deplorable, and it really bothers me.
Well, Congressman, I wasn't expecting you to reach into the vault for Ghetto Boys. In that song, you have an individual described who thinks he's fighting another person, and he ends up realizing his mind playing tricks on him, that he's fighting the cement. He's punching out the cement and hurting himself. Do you think
that was? I believe that was Bushwick Bill.
Bushwick Bill.
That was Bushwick Bill.
Yes, sir. So here we are. Do you think that Donald Trump is being Bushwick Bill and ultimately hurting himself?
Well, certainly. We have a Democratic House now, and I heard some of the other folks on your show talk about Whitaker and what happens next. The reality is, I don't think that you can do much in the way of ending the Mueller probe without certain things happening in the House. Obviously, subpoena power is now going to happen, so even if he were to somehow be fired, Congress will very immediately be able to subpoena anything any report that Mueller has issued. And I think more broadly, here's the real issue. The president chooses to fight everyone. And in this instance, you're talking about members of Congress who woke up every day and gave their all. And it's at a certain point in time, you know, you don't always have to agree with what everybody says or does, but there's a certain base level of respect that I think everybody that serves in Congress should be accorded. And what the president did in the White House today showed a total lack of respect for those members of Congress, many of whom are my friends, and it's just entirely inappropriate.
Do you think it goes to Donald Trump's moral character, and do Republicans need to stand up to that?
Well, certainly it's a character issue, but in terms of Republicans standing up to him, I don't know what that means. I mean, I speak out regularly, as do many others.
I know you do, and I appreciate you coming on the beat. I guess one thing it means in the short time we have left is, do Republicans need to say that the new Attorney General needs to be someone without even a hint of conflict about law and order, regardless of where this probe leads?
Yeah, that's a great question. A good tweet you could find would be Senator Lamar Alexander, Republican senator, who said that no Attorney General nominee will get confirmed if they are willing to shut down the Mueller probe. In other words, the Mueller probe must continue unimpeded, uninterrupted. Mitt Romney said it. Lamar Alexander said it. I think you'll see a lot of other Republican senators say it. We have a bill in the House that would also protect it. So I'm a little concerned with what Whitaker has said in the particular column that he wrote. But I don't think that Whitaker is going to have free rein to impede this investigation.
But do you think it is wrong? Do you think it is wrong for President Trump to install someone in there who's on the record saying we should basically defund this probe to end it?
The president has a right to terminate an attorney general and nominate someone of his choice.
I know that,
clear,
and you know that, but this guy's
yeah.
got a record. There's a lot of lawyers out there.
Yeah, I understand, but this is a 210-day appointment at its max, I believe. Listen, I'm troubled by that. To be clear, I'm not hemming and hawing on you on that. But this is not his nominee, nor do I think that this individual will be the nominee because of some of the things that he's said and written.
And you're drawing an important line there, which is, yes, this is supposed to be temporary. Who's the person that can actually get through the Senate and the House having more power? Congressman Costello, I know this is your first time on the beat. I hope you'll come back.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Ari.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.